a little over a year to do it because it's got to be big. They've got to have big special effects. So the idea was all the studios started putting all their time and all their effort for 1979 when they can come out with their other big science fiction extravaganzas. So the first one out of the gate is Glenn Larson with Battlestar Galactica on television. First one out of the gate theatrically is also Glenn Larson because he does the TV movie for Buck Rogers in the 21st Century. It's a not bad TV movie, but it's obviously a TV movie. Nevertheless, that is going to be actually the first Star Wars oriented thing to hit the theaters. So Universal released it at the theaters. This is the same year that Star Trek The Motion Picture comes out. The Black Hole comes out. Moonraker comes out. And then the one that actually ends up becoming the next legacy science fiction movie, the one that no one was paying attention to, Alien.
Right.
So this is going to be the, not just science fiction, the Star Wars James Bond movie, which is not unknown to the Roger Moore films, because with the exception of Spy Who Loved Me, they always had a gimmick angle at the beginning.
Yeah.
So Live and Let Die is kind of has a blaxploitation kind of sense because that was a big time.
Yeah.
All right. Then the next one, The Man with the Golden Gun, has a stupid martial art kung fu section squeezed right in the middle of it.
Yeah. They're almost like Marvel movies, how they pick a genre.
Yeah, exactly. And then and now we're back to it again with like the biggest gimmick of them all is a science fiction James Bond in space. Okay, so now Roger. So now you've sat down and watched the film. What did you think?
Okay, so we sat down, we watched it again. I mean, you know that I like things to be a little goofy. You know that I like things to be a little out of control and a little wild. Well, this movie is out of control in a way that really vibes with Roger today. And part of that is that it's a spy film. It's an action movie. It's a romance. It's a travel log. It's a sci-fi, sure. It's also a horror film. It's got moments like a horror film. I'm just talking about how it switches its tone constantly. It becomes whatever it needs to be in the moment. It's a comedy. It's a Western, even at one point, where suddenly, and the musical choices are suddenly like just rolling with it, like da 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 da. Like suddenly, when they're in Brazil, the Bond theme transforms into kind of like a big sky Western, and he comes riding over with these Caballero guys. And,
that's part. Yeah.
Oh God.
I did not know what you were talking about.
You had forgotten.
Now it's all of a sudden coming back like the cold sting at the end of a wet fist.
But you know how bizarre that moment was, and you even commented on it, where we're in Brazil.
It's
the transition to Brazil is not a transition.
It's phony Morricone music with him dressed. No.
It's John Barry doing Morricone.
No. Actually, no. It was phony. It's like the Bonanza theme or something.
Literally, it might be the Bonanza theme.
And he's dressed like the man with no name.
Yeah, he's dressed like the man with no name. And for a little while, suddenly, and you even said, this is like The Prisoner, where suddenly we're getting an episode of The Prisoner living in harmony, where suddenly we're in a Western Bond movie.
Look, I will admit, that's one of my more favorite parts about the movie.
But you know what? I'm going to bet that as we talk, that you say that more than once.
I'll say it twice.
Okay, well then my bet is secure. So, even as much as I didn't like the movie by the end when I first saw the film originally back in 79, I couldn't deny how freaking fantastic the opening sequence is. I still think that this is the best opening stunt sequence of any Bond film. There's no CGI to lean back on, because there's been more impressive, cinematic sequences since then, displays of money, displays of motorcycles jumping and buildings falling over. And
I will say, I do really like the opening sequence until Jaws gets into it. All right. But the thing about it, though, was you've been arguing, oh no, you just need to look at this again with new eyes, and if you don't come about it the way we did in 1979, if you look at it with new eyes, you can see this other kind of movie there. Well, I didn't feel that way when I watched the film. However, I will say that the opening actually made me think that I was going to. I had forgotten those little opening vignettes. Part of the thing of it was real people are doing this.
Yeah.
There's nothing phony about it. It's like real people are doing this. And then they're also figuring out how to film real people doing it.
Yeah. One feels that only Tom Cruise is doing that today.
Yeah. So if somebody like, is skiing and just like skis off of an Alp and you just see them fall like 100,000 feet. Well, that's a real guy falling. All right. That's not a dummy. It's not a special effect.
That's some French ski expert.
It's some stunt man who just did it.
Yeah.
All right. And for your eyes only. That's a real guy on the helicopter.
Yeah.
Flying around. It's not Darkman with green screen and whatever. It's a real fucking, well, it's probably green screen when you cut to Roger Moore, but everything else is a real guy. Now, the whole concept of Bond falling out of an airplane and heading towards the one guy's got a parachute to take it from him. And they're just free falling as they have a fight in midair.
It's gripping. It's gripping.
As we know, a cameraman is also free falling, filming it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter that they're not convincing as Roger Moore or Jaws. That didn't matter. The fact that they were real human beings mattered. And again, it reminded me that that's how the movies used to always be. Yeah. It's like there's some human being is accomplishing what they're setting out to do, and then another human being is filming it. It blew me away.
I actually have to say that I was surprised about two elements in this sequence where, one, there are many moments where you're in a close-up with a stuntman playing Roger Moore.
Yeah.
Falling from an airplane. And even though you're in a close-up, I'll be damned, it's almost, I mean, you said it was easy, like that you can tell. I couldn't necessarily tell.
Well, not only can I can tell the guy's Asian. I can tell the stuntman is Asian who's playing Richard Kiel.
But you know what? To me, it sells.
I don't care. I know. It's still a real guy doing it. I'm not expecting big ass Richard Kiel to be free falling like that. But that one section, though, where Bond's got to get the guy, and he just kind of turns himself into a missile.
Yeah, and he goes flying in on him.
Flying like towards him. And it's a real guy just cutting through the air like a bullet. That was fucking amazing.
Yeah, you start thinking back in the day, the guys making movies were like super studs. Mm-hmm. They were superhuman, and doing incredible things.
For the course for a James Bond movie at that time.
Yeah, the jumps that they had to do, the quantity of jumps, and like I think the Tom Cruise movie recently did a similar thing.
And they didn't do that for any of the other action scenes. It was always just the opening action scene that like you see human beings doing things that should be impossible.
After the opening sequence, and I just have to say the Shirley Bassey song, which
is terrible.
It was originally supposed to be sung by Frank Sinatra, and apparently they went through. But
maybe the most tuneless of all the James Bond
things. What I thought. That's what I thought. But I'll have to tell you, the last 2 days since we watched it, it's been in my head.
Give me a fucking headache. Every terrible thing about this movie. Well, yeah, I agree. But then I thought about it for 2 days.
I love it. Where are you? Why do you hide? Let's just talk about the mission. Let's talk about Drax. Let's talk about what this is really about. Let's talk about the villain, because this is really what hooked me on the film. Like watching the first sequence, I was like, when we rewatched the movie, and then even with you, I was like totally into it. And then the movie begins. We're given our mission. We see that the Moonraker has been stolen, and then we're introduced, to Drax and the concept of our mission and who he is. And as I was watching it, lo and behold, I mean, maybe it's just because of everything that's going on right now in the world, but I look at it and I'm like, this is Elon Musk.
No, that works. That works completely.
They are, and even as they describe it at the back of the box, if you were to say he's challenged by the powerful Elon Musk, a rich industrialist obsessed with the conquest of space.
Your best point is the Elon Musk with his own spaceships and everything.
He's also his own spaceships.
The richest man in the world.
He's got his facility in California, in the California desert, where he's building things using government money, United States government money for the British and American space programs. I suddenly realized this is a super contemporary Bond, and as the movie unfolds, And we start realizing like his whole plan, which has since been repeated in a couple of Bond movies. Mm-hmm. And then we realize what the theme of the movie is, which I'll get to later. Mm-hmm. I just realized this movie says what I want a Bond movie to say. And even though it's goofy and wild as hell and kind of crazy and has a few embarrassing moments and even a few little groaners, I'm so willing to overlook all of that because it's like somebody trying to push the envelope cinematically in a Bond film inside of the frame of what's possible.
The movie has a bad rap, which I pretty much agree with, except for one thing that has a bad rap, and that is Michael Lonsdale. He has a bad rap of like one of the weakest.
He's fucking amazing in this movie.
I wouldn't go that far, but you
laugh at every single line.
I like him a lot,
and in a good way.
I like him a lot. I like him a lot. I mean, like I think he's neutered by the fact that they keep cramming Jaws into it all the time. He helps make Drax a third-rate villain, but I don't think he's a third-rate villain. But I like the implications, even without a Elon Musk parallel. But the parallel is kind of, you can't ignore it.
It's
frankly
impossible to ignore. And you can imagine Elon Musk saying lines like, "Even in death, my magnificence is boundless."
Yeah, I know.
Like he might have tweeted that actually.
Left to his own devices, Drax would be even more powerful in the movie than he is, but I think the film had other fish to fry. To me, look, when they go into space, it gets a little exciting. I don't think once they get to space, it's exciting, but the going to space is exciting. But the one sequence that I actually think kind of works in the way I think the movie wants to work, in the way that you're claiming that it does work, I think the one sequence that actually kind of works is they get to California. And so Bond lands in LAX, and you see the famous space station restaurant there in the background. And he gets on the secondary Bond girl. She's a helicopter pilot, so she's going to take him to Drax's home. And it's like, it's out in the California desert. So they're just flying, and they go to the where they make all their space shit. And that goes on forever. And I don't know where I guess they're in Tustin or someplace like that. Okay. Or Redlands or something.
Yeah, like Palmdale.
Yeah, Palmdale. Yeah. Some desert, Palm Springs, someplace like that.
They're out wherever they actually do those tests set.
And then they're on like desert for a while. And then there's this, right in the middle of the desert, there's this greenery and there's this trees, and then there's Versailles. Now, I'm not 100% sure from watching the movie if the idea is that he just built a replica of Versailles and put it in Palm Springs, or if he just bought Versailles from the French government and had it shipped
to
Palm Springs.
He bought Versailles and had it shipped over. She actually says he brought it over stone by stone.
Well, stone by stone doesn't mean he got, but I think the implication is yes, because he tried to buy Eiffel Tower and the French wouldn't sell him.
He's immensely powerful. He doesn't care about governments. Like, this is starting to sound really familiar to me in this day and age that we're in right now.
Okay, but the thing about it was, where the film, that's really funny. Okay, the idea that somebody would buy Versailles and stick it in the middle of the California desert.
Yeah, and then he's got everybody dressed in French outfits, and they're doing shooting parties.
But the thing that's so fucking great about it is they go to Versailles and film it. They're actually shooting in the real Versailles.
Yeah.
And they use it about as well as Sofia Coppola did in Marie Antoinette. Yeah. So the fact that they're shooting in the real Versailles and saying that it's California, that is a Hebrew title, Fouk le Fouk, which is a reverse on a reverse.
Yeah, reverse.
And that's a reverse on a reverse. All right. And just the whole concept of that is clever and is funny, and the tongue is in the right side of the cheek.
Yeah.
It's the only big idea that I think they have that they pull off.
The movie is a French co-production. In those days, France was great to do co-productions in, and all of these guys, like when I lived in the south of France, I got to know a few of them. Like all these like Bond directors, they all live in the south of France. They like live in, Saint-Paul Vance and so does Roger Moore. In fact, they're all living down there. And you can see the kind of artifacts of a French production, the kind of Remy Julien style gags and things throughout the movie. Okay, so you mentioned, let's just right there at Versailles. he's with her secretary, and there's a moment where he's like kind of snuck into, I think it's maybe Drax's room or the office. She's a secretary, and so it's the office, and he's kind of rummaging through her desk, and she captures him. She finds him, and she's kind of this beautiful French actress who
I think she's French Canadian, actually.
Oh, is she French Canadian?
Yeah, I think so,
So apologies to the French, but she catches him and he approaches her and he's about to do his wiles. Now, at this point for Roger Moore as Bond, and I think you even mentioned it as we were watching the movie, he's aged up quite a bit. He's an elder Bond almost at this point. Like he's doing Folks kind of around the same time, right?
Yeah.
Where he's got a beard and he's playing his actual.
Yeah, I think he did it just before, yeah.
And here he's meant to be playing sexy and everything. And there's a moment where he moves in to kiss her to kind of magnetically hypnotize her. And she kind of recoils from him. She actually pulls back like with a, "Are you serious?" look on his face. And then he does a kind of, "Hey, I'm James Bond. I'm still James Bond." And she's like, what the fuck? And they kiss. And maybe it's because I'm now in my 50s. I'm kind of identifying with Roger Moore. I love Roger Moore, like in this role. And I'm kind of getting that he's, that he's kind of, he's nearing the end.
Look, I'm a huge Roger Moore fan. I'm not so much as Bond, but I like almost everything else. The irony of Roger Moore playing Bond is the fact that Roger Moore had been playing that kind of character since the late 50s, or back when he was on Maverick, playing Beau Maverick.
Yeah.
Handsome, bon vivant, that's athletic, but also has a sense of humor, but also like almost impossibly handsome.
Incredibly charismatic.
Like distractingly handsome, but incredibly charismatic, a little bit of a sense of humor about who he is. Everything that he had done beforehand was just kind of perfect for what they wanted him to do in Bond. All the Saint, he was terrific. The Bond movie he should have been in is on His Majesty's Secret Service. If he had been cast in he's the perfect age, and that would have been the perfect Bond movie for him to do. And I'm not shitting on George Lazenby, but Roger Moore would have been better in that movie. To me, I really like that movie, but there's no Bond in it. And I actually think the only Bond movie he's sort of the right age is Live and Let Die. He's still kind of the guy who's in the movie Gold. He's still kind of the guy that's a Simon Templar.
Yeah.
From that point on, he's just kind of aged out. He's too old. He's too old for the role. He's mummified to who he used to be. Now, he's not that anymore, and nobody seems to know it more than Roger Moore. Roger Moore totally understands it. He knows that it's a little ridiculous that all these women are just falling all over him. He's pretty much wearing, by Moonraker anyway, he's pretty much wearing a Roger Moore mask. And that's even in For Your Eyes Only. All right, he's wearing a mask of what Roger Moore used to look like. And you can tell that it's killing him to keep that weight. There's almost something punk rock about how he doesn't commit to the fight scenes. He doesn't commit to them at all. He does just enough to not make it parody. But he's still got this weird smile on his face, like, no way can I beat up all these guys. And the stuntmen are doing almost everything. I throw a couple of punches. He never really commits. Even the action stuff, he's not really committing. He's always got a sardonic look on his face. That's the weird aspect of this era of Bond movie until the end. All right,
Yeah.
from pretty much from at least The Spy Who Loves Me On.
But you know what? Here in Moonraker, we still have, I mean, maybe it's too much emphasis for me on Ken Adam, but Ken Adam to me is Bond. That is a Bond movie, is Ken Adam, and we get our first look at what Ken is doing.
Well, it's your most legitimate point is the fact that Ken Adams is the auteur of the film, especially at a certain point when it's just one big set after another.
Well, when you see for the first big one, the first introduction, okay, this is Ken. We've given him something to do. The centrifuge.
Yeah.
okay, one, that's a mechanical centrifuge. It's like he's got to build that thing to operate. Like it's that's no simple thing to make that they did down there, and it looks really badass, and it photographs great, and it's a great sequence.
Well, like one of your things that you've actually mentioned that I have to tip my hat to is the idea that, like, okay, even giving that it's a cheesy Star Wars ripoff designed by Ken Adams might be better than Star Wars. Like, I can't argue with that. Those sets are fucking amazing. Every control panel, every corridor, every observation deck. I mean, everything.
Because there's a moment where we walk into that temple, that Olmec temple, and that shot that tied me back into this film, that made me want to re-engage with this movie. From that moment forward, it is only Ken Adam, this movie.
I agree.
And suddenly it is one amazing Ken Adam set, and sometimes they're just throwaways, like that blast chamber sequence where you're underneath the space shuttle. It's like a conference room.
No, that was terrific.
It's every bit as good as Dr. Strangelove, this incredible set. And it's there for 30 seconds of screen time.
I think the space stuff is silly as fuck. Having said that, one of the things that's amazing about it is it plays not even like a Star Wars ripoff, like something like Star Crash or Message from Space.
Although they do rip it off.
Yeah. It plays more like a Japanese or a spaghetti sci-fi film from about 10 years earlier. Like, for instance, the big set piece in Moonraker is when this space force of Americans show them. They all have their backpacks and their ray guns, and then they fight Drax's space force floating through space, and they're with their jetpacks and their ray guns. Now, I've seen two movies that have had sequences like that before. One is Kenji Hikasaku's The Green Slime, has a big sequence like that. Another one is Antonio Margheriti's Wild Wild Planet, which is one of the best of the spaghetti sci-fi movies. Now, frankly, I like them both better in those other films. However, this is Star Crash, Wild Wild Planet, with Ken Adams doing the sets and
studio
a completely unlimited budget for special effects.
Yeah, and no time, but spend as much as you need to.
Blank
check.
So it's like we're seeing the stuff that's done in cheesy sci-fi, not science fiction, sci-fi movies, but never done this elaborately. Every model in this thing is fantastic. When the space station blows up, fantastic.
Yeah.
The model blowing is amazing.
Even the simplest thing.
Even the passenger jet getting blown away by Moonraker's exhaust draft. That was fantastic. That
frankly,
plane
all of the takeoffs of the Moonraker models are fantastic. These are miniatures being lifted in real time, and it's stunning to look at. Spectacular model work. In fact, I'm looking at special effects that were honestly reminding me of Dark Star, which we talked about before.
Yeah.
And yes, they are directly ripping off Star Wars. They blow up their version of the Death Star.
Yeah.
We get that. So if you're a kid and you want some Star Wars, you're delivered a little bit of that, and use the Force bond. There's that moment. We've got to go off of our automatic targeting system, use the Force bond. I'm okay with all that. Those are like kind of my least favorite moments of the movie, but I'm okay with it. I love the kind of playful style. I love that this is when they're flying. I love that entire battle sequence that you're talking about is completely hellaciously violent. There's so much death going on. Everyone is getting blasted by lasers. And by the way,
no, there's death all the way throughout the whole movie. That poor gondola guy.
Everybody's getting it. Everybody's getting it. But what's weird about everybody getting it in this is they take such great care and so much time during the liftoff sequence where they're flying up and Bond says, let's see what the cargo is. And they flip on the cargo and they see that the cargo of the space shuttle is full of, men and women, two by two. And they're all kind of in zero G and slow motion with their beautiful sort of L'Oreal hair floating in the air, kissing their ideal mate. And there's this realization, like all these beautiful people are up there. They're there to breed and to repopulate the earth. Well, once the time the Space Force gets there and starts their war in space, everyone on the station is killed, except for Jaws and that little girl and whoever else manages to escape. All of those people are killed in the end, and to me, it's poignant. And during this entire space war thing, when you listen to the music, it's sad music that's playing. It's a strange juxtaposition of all this crazy action and then this kind of sad music. It's like pending doom is what I feel out of that music. It's
look, okay. Obviously, I don't agree. I think Lewis Gilbert not only does a horrible job directing the film, I think it's as if made for a Guy Hamilton reappreciation society. To watch Moonraker again made me realize that, wow, Diamonds Are Forever isn't so bad.
Well, I love Diamonds Are Forever. And I would say Diamonds Are Forever is,
Live and Let Die isn't so bad. I mean, the boat chase in Live and Let Die is like the 7-Ups compared to the gondola chase in Moonraker. One of the things we said, and I was wrong, I was giving it too much credit. I said, this is like the chase in a Dean Jones Walt Disney movie, except those are done well. There's nothing.
I love the gondola chase. The gondola chase?
The gondola chase is horrible. All right. But the end chase of $1 Million Duck is actually pretty good.
Well, I like $1 Million Duck, but I also like the gondola chase in this. I love that I love that the guy comes out of a coffin to throw knives at him and then falls back into the coffin. Like, this movie is
kills a poor gondola guy.
This movie is made for a specific age of kid to watch. And
what, 55?
Well, I am at 55, ready to reawaken that person who, I held back so hard on when I was young. I was so wound up in my own shit that, like, to be honest, Quentin, when I watch Bond movies today, I feel what's missing. It's a kind of playfulness, a goofiness. Like, I don't mind it being playful and goofy. I love that in those movies. And when I think about my favorite Bond movies, like you were talking about a few of your favorites, my go-tos were always Diamonds Are Forever and Goldfinger. I mean, those are easy ones to go for.
Yeah. Well, look, when I watched the movie, it made me wish we were watching Live and Let Die. All right. Because I've only half seen that one.
That can be arranged.
No, I know that. I know. But it was making me wish we were watching Live and Let Die. And at the end, when it said, stay tuned for Bond coming up next in For Your Eyes Only, I just like, oh, yeah, okay, a real movie.
Well, a movie that takes itself seriously.
Yes.
A movie that, isn't allowing
with a real Bond girl.
Hey, I love all the girls in this Bond movie. I love them all. Okay. I think they're all fantastic. And I just have to say also Holly Goodhead as
even his name
equivalent.
Holly Goodhead is so stupid. And I actually think she is actually named that in the book.
She is not named that in the book.
Of course she's not.
She's not.
Because, okay, look, you have to remember that there was a time where the biggest sex joke ever said in a Hollywood movie was the name Pussy Galore. By the time it gets to Moonraker with her name Holly Goodhead, it's such a beyond obvious pun for a Bond movie. It's not worthy of a Bond movie. That's the kind of name that the sexy phys ed teacher in a Porky's ripoff, not Porky's, or an Animal House ripoff. Her name would be, Mrs. Goodhead.
It's part of the format. Listen, it's hard for me to defend the name Holly Goodhead because it's actually a disservice to who she is, both in the original book and in this movie. I mean, when she whips out all of the, she's Bond. She's a Bond. She's his equivalent. Look, in other movies, we get fucking Felix Leitner.
No,
in this, we get an actual equivalent to Bond, a female equivalent who has devices and.
I like Lois Childs, but I think she's a non-entity in this movie, and I don't know if it's 100% her fault, because I think there's a situation where they never decided on what the character should be. And I think they were torn between three different ideas, and they never made a decision. And so thus she never really had a character to play. She didn't know whether she should go blind. She couldn't go left. She couldn't go right because they wouldn't let her. I mean, just to use as another example, Jill St. John has a character in Diamonds Are Forever, and you can like her, you can not like her, but she plays the character, and there's a contrast to her with Bond, and there's a contrast to everything else. She's just kind of, and forget about the fact that it seems as if her entire performance is post-dubbed, which makes her never sound like she's in the same room.
It does sound like that. It does sound like that. There is a kind of
but
detached...
Lois Childs is a good actress. Yeah. I worked with her on a CSI, so I don't actually think it's necessarily her fault. She was terrific in Death on the Nile.
Yeah, all I can say is that her final line in this movie, when she just says, "Take me around the world one more time, James." I don't know. I love hearing her say it.
That was the only good line they gave her. But not only does she have a good line, the head and shoulder shot of her floating is probably the best anti-gravity part of the whole movie.
Yeah.
Is that little, like, filming down on her,
just
floating.
That moment.
That one moment is the best anti-gravity moment of the fucking film.
Yeah. You feel it. You feel it.
That's Moonraker.
Is Moonraker.
Trailer.
My third favorite Bond film.
Okay.